Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yes, sir, go ahead.
Hey, you said earlier that sometimes...
What's your name?
Omar.
Omar, go ahead, sir.
You said that sometimes it's appropriate to use outside information in order to interpret what the Bible is saying.
Yeah.
In those particular circumstances, and I'm not saying that maybe this is not true for all circumstances in your worldview, but at least in those circumstances, the Bible is not your ultimate standard by which all truth claims are measured against. And if the Bible is not your ultimate standard by which we measure truth claims, then what is?
The Bible is the ultimate standard in faith and practice, but in order to understand the Bible, you need to know things that are outside the Bible to know what it means. That's what I'm saying.
Like what?
This is called prolegomena, by the way, in theology. You have to know language, right? You have to know logic. You have to know that words mean things. You have to know basic cause and effect. You have to know order. In fact, let's just take the first verse of the Bible that we mentioned earlier. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, right? What does that presuppose you already know? It presupposes, first of all, you know language. It presupposes you know what a beginning is. It presupposes you have some idea of what God is. It presupposes you know cause and effect. God created the heavens and the earth. It presupposes you know what heavens and... It presupposes a lot, right? All of that information you need to know to understand the Bible, even to understand the newspaper. You guys don't know what a newspaper is. Even to understand the internet. You need certain knowledge to understand what any text says. That's what we're saying.
So would you say that it's wrong? Because, I mean, you put up a list of 8 reasons saying, you know, these are 8 reasons why we should trust the New Testaments. Mm-hmm. If it wasn't for those 8 reasons, should we not trust the Bible? And is it wrong to just presuppose the Bible being true as opposed to saying, so like you have 8 reasons and you're saying because of these 8 reasons we know that the Bible is true. But what if we didn't have those 8 reasons? Should we not trust the Bible in that case?
Well, since I think there are reasons to trust the Bible, whether you know those reasons or not, it's a good idea to trust the Bible, right? Like, for example, I have no idea how my car works, but I trust that it does.
But then,
right?
So it's based on a faith. We put our faith in the Bible rather than putting our faith in our ability to intellectually reason through those 8 reasons and then say, okay, I'm going to trust my intellect to determine now that the Bible is true.
Well, thankfully, you can know something is true, or let me say it another way. You can assume something's true and be right about it even if you can't prove it's true. Right?
Right.
Okay? So if the Bible's true and you don't know why it's true and you're still trusting it, okay, that's still good. You're trusting it, right? But you're not going to be able to properly evangelize in this culture today if you can't give reasons as to why it's true. Because why should you trust the Bible and not the Quran? Or
I agree.
Why should you trust the Bible and say nothing else, just your own self? Why not be a humanist or an atheist?
I agree, and that's why I benefited a lot from those reasons, but it's just a matter of, from my heart, where am I coming from? I'm going to trust God, and I don't need a reason to trust God. I'm going to presuppose the Word of God being true, because based on the argument that you made, I mean, what's your argument for...
Well, wait a minute, stop right there for a second. You can do that, but what if a Muslim comes along and says, I presuppose the Quran is the Word of God, and it disagrees with that New Testament?
That's when we give the defenses that you put up there.
That's why we need that. That's what I'm saying.
So how do we, based on your reasoning, how can we say that the Bible has no mistakes in it? Because the apostles, they could have been genuine, and we could have reasons to believe in the resurrection and all the other historical events, but Paul could have made a little mistake as he's writing them.
Okay, the reason we think that, now you're getting into inerrancy. The reason we think the Bible's inerrant is because Jesus did. And I just have a personal policy. If somebody predicts and accomplishes his own resurrection from the dead, I just trust whatever the guy says. Okay? Now, can I understand and answer every objection to the Bible? No, I can't do that. There are some things I don't know. Many things I don't know. There is some knowledge I haven't discovered yet. There are some issues that we haven't been able to resolve yet. But that doesn't mean that I shouldn't trust Jesus, because we have good historical evidence that Jesus was who he said he was, And we have good historical evidence to know that Jesus said certain things about the Old Testament and about promising the New. And so even if there are things we can't explain, we can still put our trust in the Bible. Now, is it possible that there are minor errors in that book and Christianity is still true? Yeah, that's possible. Do you have to be an inerrantist to believe or to be a Christian? No, you don't. You can believe there are minor errors in that book and Christianity
But
is
then
still
you're
true.
making yourself the authority on where the errors are.
Yeah, that's one of the problems with it. Yeah, that is one of the problems with it. And the other problem with it is that you seem to be disagreeing with Jesus. And it's never a good place to be disagreeing with Jesus.
Oh, well, they could argue that the inerrancy is what they said that Jesus said. Because if you're not starting with this, then you're opening this up for attack.
Okay, but stop right there. There were many Christians before that any of that book was written.
Right.
So do you have to believe an inerrant Bible to be a Christian?
They believed that the Old Testament was inerrant.
Yeah, but
and
they
that's
didn't-
why they believed the resurrection, because the Old Testament prophesied of
No,
the
they had
resurrection.
no. That's not why they believe the resurrection.
That's why Paul was arguing from the scriptures.
Yeah, well, he was trying to show that it's predicted, but the reason he believed in the resurrection was because he witnessed it, not because he saw it in the Old Testament. After he witnessed it, he went back to the Old Testament and said, wow, I never noticed this before. Okay? So there were Christians long before there was a Bible. And so you can be a Christian.
The Bible was before before Jesus even came to the earth. They had the Bible, and that's what Jesus quoted.
Before there was a New Testament. There were Christians before. Remember, the New Testament is a evidence of the resurrection and an evidence of Jesus' teachings. It's not the cause of the resurrection or the cause of Jesus' teachings. It's the result of Jesus' teachings and the resurrection. Think of the New Testament, particularly the Gospels, as newspaper reports of what happened. Okay? And then the epistles are, how do we live if all this is true? And then Revelation is the consummation of all things. In fact, in the New Testament, you have 4 divisions. You have the historical propagation of the gospel. That's the gospel. Those are, let me say it another way. The historical propagation of Jesus, what Jesus said and did. Then you have the historical propagation of the church in the book of Acts. Then you have the application of what Christianity is all about. Those are all the epistles. And then you have the consummation of what Christianity is all about in the book of Revelation. So you have those 4 divisions.
Both Jesus and the apostles were relying on the scriptures to make their argument. Jesus was constantly quoting from the scriptures.
Yes, he was quoting the Old Testament, but they weren't relying on the Old Testament to show that Jesus had risen from the dead. They just applied some things from the Old Testament in the New Testament to say the Old Testament has predicted this. But I got to move on to some other folks, okay? Thanks for your question.